And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Strategy Show. It is Tuesday, November 23rd. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Adam Scherer, and we've got an easy one for you today. 4 games, lots of interesting injury news that's going to cause us to have at least a lot to talk about. So that's fun. Please, as you get in the door, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Adam, how was your Monday?
It was okay. Nothing too crazy. Had a few decent teams, but nothing that got to the top. So, nothing really exciting.
I'm excited to play today. I don't get the sense I'm going to be able to play tomorrow or Friday. So this is going to be it for me until Thanksgiving is over. So got to get it in while I can right now. I'm pumped for it. I'm going to have to play like soccer today or soccer tomorrow afternoon or something, but can't pull off the nights right now with people in my house. So we're going to have to really dig deep on a couple of these games. I'm glad that we only have 4 because we have a lot of injury news that's really going to change things up. Also, I haven't mentioned it, but shout out to No House Advantage for being the presenting sponsor of this show. If you use the promo code Awesemo, you can get a little bit of extra money on your first deposit, but we'll talk about No House Advantage in a little bit. Adam, I think we need to just dive in here because I think we're going to put 10 to 15 minutes on each one of these games.
Yeah, sounds good.
All righty. The Miami Heat are 9.5-point favorites in Detroit, 207.5 total. For the Heat, it's pretty normal. We don't have anything too weird going on with Miami. We've got a Q tag on Duncan Robinson, and we know Markieff Morris is out. For the opposite side of this game, though, it's a little bit different. Killian Hayes, out. We know that Kelly Olynyk is out. We also have Isaiah Stewart suspended for the next 2 games. That leaves them a little thin in the front court, at least in terms of like actual centers, particularly in this matchup against Bam. Let's start on the Miami side. I'm assuming Duncan Robinson plays. It will matter if he doesn't, but I don't know how much it matters right now. If he's in, he's not all that relevant. If he's out, I think Caleb Martin ends up looking pretty darn good at the flat minimum on DraftKings. But for what our focus is going to be, it's Jimmy Butler, it's Bam Adebayo, and to a lesser extent, it's Kyle Lowry.
Yeah, that's where I'm at as well. Like you said, Robinson, if he's out, he's not like there's not a bunch of usage to go around. There's nothing really added. It's just about the minutes. So guys like Martin or Strus potentially step up. But Butler, Adebayo always look like the top 2 pieces here. Adebayo is the one that I typically get to the most just because he's a little bit cheaper than Butler. He's produced at a really high level this season. Struggled his last game, but I think it looks like a really good spot. And then again, like you were alluding to on the Detroit side, there's not really any bigs on the Pistons right now. So looks pretty good for Bam. Butler's expensive. He has played really well this year, though. So, I still think on a 4-game slate, he's fine. But Bam's the priority for me. I really also don't mind in tournaments getting to some Tyler Hero. He's priced up, but he has, been a good player this year. He has taken on a bigger role as well. So tournaments only, but, I think getting to 30 or so minutes from Hero makes some sense too.
You mentioned the relationship between Butler and Bam, and you're talking about DraftKings. Small forward eligible for Butler, 9,700. Center eligible for Bam, 8,500. Think about how much better this sounds. Bam is 10-1 on FanDuel today. Does have the MPE. Bam is 8K, and you can play him at power forward. He looks exceptional on FanDuel today. Power forward, center eligibility, 8K.
Wait, you just said Bam was 10-1 and that he was 8K.
Oh, Butler, 10-1.
Okay.
Bam, 8K. It's a really good spot for Bam on FanDuel for tonight. What do we do with Kyle Lowry? 6,800 on FanDuel, 7,700 on DraftKings. I think it's pretty clear he's a better option on FanDuel. I mean, being $900 cheaper is just going to get you there. But How much are you going to get to? He seems to be like fitting in here around 0.9 fantasy points per minute and not really the same Kyle Lowry we're used to.
Yeah, he's someone that I haven't really rostered much of this year, but that's in large part because on most slates, you just have a ton of guard options in this price range. Now, with it only being a 4-game slate, it's going to be obviously a little bit easier to get to Lowry. He's at 0.92 DraftKings points per minute this year, only a 17.8% usage percentage. That's not really surprising when you consider that, he's playing with Bam, he's playing with Butler, but you also have Tyler Hero closing games and playing a bunch of minutes. Hero comes in with a 28.7% usage rate that is actually the second highest on the team. So between those three guys, there's just not a lot of shot volume to go around for Lowry, but he is to some extent making up for it with assists. He leads the team with a 31.5% assist percentage, which is just ahead of Butler. He's also playing big minutes typically. So that's something that, makes him a little bit more appealing. You can count on him for around 36 minutes in most games. So he looks fine, but I still think that Butler and Bam are clearly ahead of him for me on DraftKings. Or I guess I should say Bam is clearly ahead of him. I would rather get to Butler, but he is $2,000 more expensive. So I don't know how easy that'll be in practice. From a tournament standpoint, though, where I think it'll be really interesting is how the ownership plays out between Lowry and Hero. Right now on DraftKings, we have Hero at 10%, Lowry at 8%. If they end up being about the same, then they're pretty similar plays to me. But if it gets to a point where Hero gets to 15 and Lowry's at 8 or vice versa, I would prefer whichever one's lower on.
I think I prefer Hero right now, like by a pretty significant margin on DK. You get the extra position. So not that it's like a huge difference having both guards, but you do get the ability to go point guard, shooting guard on Tyler Hero. $400 cheaper. I actually have him a fantasy point ahead of Kyle Lowry right now. So if that relationship or if that ownership is close, I'd be more likely to get to Hero. I think we probably want to lay out, would you maybe not expect, but obviously Max Strus and Caleb Martin are going to see some increased minutes if Duncan Robinson is out. Caleb Martin is the flat minimum shooting guard, small forward. Is he going to become one of the better value options of the day if Robinson ends up out?
He could. My concern is that we've seen Strus typically playing ahead of him, and Miami can just play guys at so many different positions. So I think Martin probably becomes a good value. It's more so just, how exactly does it play out between him and Strus off the bench?
Yeah, we got 24 minutes out of Martin when Hero missed on the 18th. Strus appears to just be like pretty locked into that 20 to 24 range, somewhere in that neighborhood. I think both guys end up looking a little bit better. Both guys have the same sort of shooting guard, small forward split as well. Clearly both get better. Does anybody else benefit though if Duncan Robinson is out? Like Gabe Vincent might get minutes. Does he become also in that discussion?
Right. I was going to say, I'd have a hard time getting to Vincent. I think Vincent is someone that potentially could screw up your Caleb Martin or Max Strus plays, but I would lean towards Martin and Strus ahead of Vincent if Robinson is out.
Okay, because we did see Vincent also play the 25 minutes when Hero was out as well. I think those guys are just going to they're going to have like 66 minutes for all three of them, and getting the guy right that gets like two more than the worst guy is going to be the key piece. But the keys here are Bam and Butler, and Bam is one of my favorite plays of the day. Miami's pretty easy to look at, especially if Robinson ends up in. Detroit, on the other hand, not quite as easy. So we know that we don't have who would be their first two choices to play center. We've got Jeremy Grant, about 15% owned across both sites. Cade Cunningham, 20 to 25. Sadiq Bey is close to 20 on DK, 30 on FanDuel, where he's only 5,700. We've got Corey Joseph, who played monster minutes their last time out. He went to 38.5 2 nights ago. He's projected for 28% ownership on FanDuel, 19 on DraftKings. We've got Trey Lyles, who is likely to be the closest thing to a center for this one. 15% owned on FanDuel at 3,700. The flat 3K and 18% owned on DK. So let's start there. Are you expecting Trey Lyles to start for the Pistons today?
That's my guess. I don't think it has to happen. I mean, they also have Garza, but they could just say screw it and right out of the gate go with the small lineup. But
yeah,
my guess at this point is that it's Trey Lyles.
Okay.
Go
ahead.
It's tough even to gauge anything from last game because last game Lyles was Stewart's backup, which would make you think that he's the most likely to step into that role. But then when Stewart was ejected in the third quarter, they actually subbed Josh Jackson in first. I think they subbed Jackson in to take free throws. Then they brought Lyles in, but Lyles only played like a minute, and then they went.
He only played 11 minutes for the game too.
Right. Yeah. They basically just played small the entire second half. So, but like trying to piece together from rotations what I think is going to happen. Like my best guess is that Lyles steps into the starting role.
I gave Lyles 22 minutes. I gave Garza 14. I think the other minutes at center go to Jeremy Grant.
That sounds right to me. So like somewhere in there, I think you could go, 24 Lyles, 12 Garza, something like it doesn't matter, but
sure.
I mean, it matters, but like it's all the same.
And we have no idea what is actually the truth there anyway. So like, while that could matter, neither one of us are going to have a lot of ammunition on either side of that.
Yeah, exactly. It matters in the sense of exactly how much you're going to get, but like there's nothing really. I don't have any strong reason for Lyles at 26 compared to 22 or anything. The point being that I think it's likely, assuming he starts, that the bulk of the center minutes, or around half total, go to Lyles. Like a quarter of them go to Garza, and the rest they go small.
Jesus, I think I almost died on the stream.
I would have gotten a lot of views.
Oh, come on, man. Killing me here. Literally. I don't know what just happened there. It must have been that final sip of water, but I'm pretty sure it's in my lungs now. Okay. What changes for you if we find out that Luka Garza is the starting center for the Pistons? He goes to like the 22 minutes, and then Trey Lyles is sort of more the backup.
I don't really know. That would be like that. I think that's the most uncomfortable one for me to project, because I just still don't feel comfortable saying, oh yeah, Luka Garza is going to play, 24 minutes or something. So like, I'd probably go like 20 Garza, 16 Lyles, and the rest small.
Yeah.
I think if Lyles starts, I would give him a couple more minutes than I would if Garza starts.
I agree. And then the bigger question is, does anything change for you, or what changes for you if Jeremy Grant starts at the 5?
Josh Jackson, Corey Joseph, Frank Jackson, potentially, those guys become better options. There's more minutes available for them.
Jeremy Grant is 6'6". Thought he was taller than that, but 6'6". How tall is Bam? 6'9", 6'10"? Yeah, 6'9".
Lyles is 6'10".
All right. So if we're assuming for right now, Trey Lyles is the starter here, how do you feel about 18% owned Trey Lyles, power forward center eligibility, 3K on DraftKings?
I think he looks good. I mean, he's not a bad fantasy producer either. He's certainly capable of scoring fantasy points. For the season, he's at 0.87 DraftKings points per minute, 14.2% rebounding percentage, 21.6% usage rate. If he starts, I'm pretty comfortable going to him.
Okay. Yeah, I have very little issue. Does it change for you at all on FanDuel where he's 3,700 and just power forward eligible?
No, it would change if you were just center eligible.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. Do you expect to get to any Luka Garza? Just center eligible 3K.
I mean, in 150 lineups, maybe like a little bit, just because there's 4 games and limited options, and it's not difficult to see how potentially he, gets more minutes, but it's not something I would be recommending if, you're playing like 3 lineups or anything.
Okay.
And obviously you wouldn't want to do it with Trey Lyles.
Let's talk about the rest of these guys then. I mentioned Grant, Cunningham, Bay, and Joseph, all basically the same ownership on DraftKings. Any priorities there? Any guys that stand out more or less than you're expecting?
I think that Bay and Grant look a little bit better than normal, just because there is that chance or even likelihood that they do play small for a while and you get increased rebounding numbers from those guys. There's not really any sort of meaningful sample this year without a big on the floor. Grant's played a total of 29 minutes without Olynyk, Stewart, Garza, or Lyles, and that's the most on the team. So there's nothing really to read into, but just thinking about what would be available. If they're playing small, you expect there to be more rebounding opportunities for guys like Bay and Grant. So it makes them look a little bit better than they normally do, especially Grant, who, we've talked about before. He, earlier in his career, he was this guy that didn't score a lot, but he did a good job contributing peripherals. Now he's a guy that scores a lot, doesn't really do anything else. So the potential for him to play, minutes at the 5 basically is good, makes him look better than normal. Beyond that, Cade Cunningham coming off of a triple double, but he's up to 7,400. And now you get a difficult spot against Miami. So the ceiling is certainly still there for Cunningham, but the salary I think has mostly caught up, especially in this matchup. It is worth noting he played 38 minutes in that game. I think that's important because you had seen his minutes really ramping up in recent games anyway, kind of offset by blowouts at times where he was only playing 30 minutes, but it was in like 3/4. So it's good to know that, in competitive games, he can play 38 minutes. That certainly makes his ceiling even higher than we thought it might be.
I'm oddly interested in Frank Jackson here at 5% ownership on DraftKings and 10 on FanDuel. He's the guy that I think is easiest to get over on, who could just fall into the minutes. I don't know what to do with Diallo, but it makes it really easy on FanDuel because for some reason he's 5,500. So I don't even have to sweat it. 3,500 on DraftKings, a little bit different. And I know that I wish I could remember where I read it. I guess I could obviously just search for it, but somewhere I read that Hamidou Diallo is going to start getting more and more minutes, and we're starting to see it. Went from 14 to 13 to 21 the last time out. I don't know if he's going to be north of the 20s moving forward.
Yeah.
Do you enjoy? Go ahead.
Well, so to what you were saying there, I think the Corey Joseph, Amadou Diallo, Frank Jackson trio, they all become viable options that you're not going to be overly confident in. I think Corey Joseph is the one that is quote unquote the safest, but right now he's also pulling the most ownership of this team on DraftKings at 22%. I don't think there's that big of a gap between in terms of range of outcomes between him, Frank Jackson, and Amadou Diallo for me to think that he should be twice as owned as Diallo and 4 times as popular as Jackson. So that is a situation where in tournaments I don't mind just getting more Diallo, getting more Jackson, getting a little bit less Joseph, and just assuming that this is going to be a hot hand situation where I don't really know how much the Pistons even know what they're going to do at this point. It's kind of, I assume it's going to be sort of just, throwing shit at the wall and seeing if anything works and if anything goes well. And, if it's Frank Jackson playing well, he's going to get more minutes. If it's Corey Joseph playing well, he'll get more minutes. If Trey Lyles plays out of his mind, he'll get more minutes. So the point here is I think there's a ton of volatility, and these guys are all at least somewhat linked in terms of their playing time. So when there's a big ownership gap there, especially on a smaller slate, it becomes interesting to me to kind of look at these lower owned guys that I'm not confident in, but that I think have a similar path to success.
Corey Joseph terrifies me on days when everybody knows to play him.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing with Joseph is he'd been playing decent minutes anyway.
Yeah. 30 the past two, 30 minutes the past 2 games before that.
Yeah, so that was kind of the thing is I it's hard for me to see Corey Joseph getting less minutes here unless it's a situation where one particular unit goes on a 20-0 run and just plays the rest of the game. But it's hard to see him not getting a lot of minutes.
Yeah, I don't know how many I actually want to give him. He could just as easily play 30 and Saban Lee becomes the backup point guard, and I could understand that too. I just don't trust this Pistons team. I don't trust anybody's minutes on this Pistons team other than Grant, Cunningham, and Bay.
Agreed.
I don't trust really Joseph. Joseph's getting starter minutes for me, but he could just as easily play 24 and I wouldn't even bat an eye at it.
Right. And that was my point with Frank Jackson and Diallo. When I'm projecting this game, I'm going to end up at least 30, if not more minutes for Corey Joseph. But I also realize that there's a lot of volatility in that projection because you're talking about a team that has a lot of interchangeable pieces that is also bad and doesn't really care that much about winning games. They'd rather not. So it's just really difficult the first time you see a situation like this on a bad team with a lot of interchangeable pieces, you just can't be that confident in your projections because there's a million different variables here. It's different when you talk about a team like Miami, where it's they're going to do whatever makes them most likely to win, and that is it. There's no wanting to develop Amadou Diallo. There's no wanting to see what Frank Jackson does in some role. So I think that on a team like this, you just have to keep in mind that even though Corey Joseph is the best projected of the 3, and he should be, there's still just, if this game plays out 1,000 times, it's going a lot of different directions pretty frequently.
Is there anything else we need to add on to here for this matchup? It is a gigantic question mark. Obviously, the most important piece we're going to get here is what is the starting lineup, and we'll hopefully have that information sometime between 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock tonight when you guys are watching the Deeper Dive and Live Before Lock. But are we missing anything here?
So, I mean, I guess because we didn't mention it, but Josh Jackson, 3,600 also. He falls into that same group. He's getting 2% ownership right now. He actually was the first one that they tried after Stewart. They kind of went Jackson for 21 seconds. He shot free throws. And then Lyles came in for 46 seconds. Jackson came back in for a minute 48. He picked up his fourth foul, and then they brought Diallo in. So, Josh Jackson at 3,600 potentially plays a bigger role here too.
Yeah, he's another guy where I have no idea how many minutes that dude's going to play for the Pistons on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes he's playing 30 when somebody's out. Sometimes he's playing 13.
He could play 16 minutes tonight, or he could start and play 34. Like it's it's that wide right now.
All right, so Grant, Cunningham, Bay, Joseph, Lyles is where we stand right now as like a starting lineup. Yeah.
What did you say was Joseph, Cunningham, Grant, Bay, Lyles?
Yeah. Okay. And this says nothing about the fact that the Pistons are about to roll, or like maybe not roll into Miami, but like run into a matchup against Miami that is really not well suited for this.
Right. Like, yeah, the matchup sucks too. I mean, there's plenty of value. This is kind of similar to the Orlando spot last night. There's plenty of value here and guys that are cheap enough where there's a pretty good chance one of them somehow gets there. Whether, last night it was just RJ Hampton in garbage time going nuts basically, but he still smashed his salary. There's just so many minutes that it's hard to see one of these cheap guys not doing well, but there's just like a million different game paths this game could take. So I just can't be too confident in pinpointing which guy it is. And that's why I think ownership plays such a big role between them.
And the garbage time could be very important on a 4-game slate where someone that is in this rotation for the Pistons is also likely to play if they're getting smacked. And that gets dicey. Like, does Josh Jackson play 14 minutes in normal time? They're down by 34 in the fourth quarter, and he plays the final 10 minutes of the fourth quarter and takes over. Like, that is a very real possibility.
I was going to say, out of the main pieces, and obviously we're not saying to build your lineups around the game blowing out, but like out of the main pieces that would be playable anyway, who are your best guesses at who is basically like garbage time independent?
Yeah. Oh God. So I think we see Saban Lee today. Luka Garza playing garbage time makes all the sense in the world in this spot.
Yeah, but he's probably not playing enough minutes regularly to really. But that is a path. If you're like, I'd said in 150 lineups, I could see having a little bit of Garza. That's one of the paths to how Garza gets there.
Yeah, he could certainly play like some normal backup runs in the end of the first quarter, beginning of the second, end of the third quarter, and potentially play the entire fourth quarter.
Right. Cunningham,
this is a creepy game.
So Cunningham is like, he's probably not going to play the entire fourth quarter in a blowout, but he'll still get his.
Yeah.
So that's one spot. So like, I think Garza would play. Cunningham would get some. I don't think Corey Joseph would. I think Frank Jackson would. So Jackson, Cunningham, Garza, Diallo, and then probably like Lee or Josh Jackson.
Rodney Magruder can see the floor. Saban Lee can see the floor. Right. Jamorko Pickett, whatever that is, can see the floor. Best of luck to everybody trying to figure this one out. It'll be a real
Pickett's out, so.
Oh, okay, that's good.
At least as of right now. Him, Isaiah Livers, and Chris Smith are all listed as out on two-way deals. Like they could be in by game time. We saw that happen with the Sixers a couple weeks ago, but as of right now, those guys are out.
All righty. Anything else for this game?
Pay a lot of attention to ownership in situations like this in general. Just when you have, a bad team where rotations can go a lot of different ways, just be aware of that and pay attention to ownership, because ownership is driven by median projections. And in a lot of situations, median projections are going to be correct a lot of the time, like, at least functionally correct. In situations like this, it's kind of just everybody making educated, but definitely guesses.
My dog is barking at the Whole Foods delivery person right now pretty aggressively.
Yeah, I hear it.
Yeah, I assumed everybody heard it. All right, schedule for the rest of the day. And thanks, Riggs. Appreciate you. NFL Strategy Show Thanksgiving edition. That'll be coming up immediately after this at 11 a.m. The No House Advantage NBA show will be at 3. And then we've got the Deeper Dive at 5. Adam will be back for that. Live Before Lock at 6. I will be back for that. NBA projections, NHL top stacks. They are both free for today. It's all we got from a free content perspective. So We can move it on to game number 2. This one, a little bit easier to talk about. Lakers and Knicks. Lakers are 3.5-point dogs, 214 total. The Lakers will be without LeBron James, who is suspended for a national TV game at MSG. Can't imagine the NBA is very happy about that one, but they did it. So
I can't believe they ruled so quickly.
I know. I'm surprised they didn't delay it to look into it more just until that game was over. I mean, I guess you still have, I believe you want LeBron, but at least you still get AD and Russ. Speaking of AD and Russ, AD is 10,500 on FanDuel, 10,900 on DraftKings. I think he looks really good today. Russ is 9,900 on FanDuel, 10,500 on DraftKings. I think he looks fine today. Talen Horton-Tucker is probably very happy that LeBron James is suspended. 6K on FanDuel, 5,900 on DraftKings. Probably going to shoot a bit, probably going to play a ton of minutes, picking up 30% ownership as warranted. And then we see Melo get into the 10 to 15% owned range across both sites. No one else gets any ownership whatsoever. Talk about the guys you like.
Yeah, so I mean, Horton-Tucker is, I think, where you start. 5,900, likely to play huge minutes here. You mentioned the ownership. That is still somewhat concerning to me. Horton-Tucker is good. I don't think there's a question about that. I also don't think he's nearly as good as, some of these games that he's put up recently. For the season, he's at 0.91 DraftKings points per minute, has a 22% usage rate, only a 9.8% rebounding percentage, 10.5% assist percentage. So relatively scoring dependent, likely to play big minutes. But I just always get concerned when you start approaching the 6K salary, because even on shorter slates, there's going to be alternatives in that price range that give you a similar range of outcomes. He's still playing on the same team as Russell Westbrook and Anthony Davis. There's still going to be games where he's on the floor, but he's playing a smaller role. So I am a little concerned about the ownership there. The ceiling clearly exists. I was concerned about his ownership a couple games ago too, when he got 50 something DraftKings points. So I'm not saying you can't play him or anything, but I do think that there's going to be players in his price range that are significantly lower owned and still look decent. So do pay attention to, how he fits in the lineups. As far as Davis and Russ, they both look good here. I think the salaries are reasonable. One thing with the Knicks, they've been good defending the paint this year. They've not been good defending the 3-point line. Yeah. Don't really think Russ can do a whole lot about that. So maybe not the best spot for him, even though I'm sure he's still going to try. Yes. So if you're splitting hairs, I think, I would lean toward Davis just because he has a little bit more to his game offensively. But they both obviously look better with LeBron out.
By the way, I want to hit on the super chat from Terry Florida Boy 420, who gave us the $14.20 super chat. So working in another 420. Kudos to you on that one, Terry Boy. It said, morning fam, took down another turbo slate. $10 2K to first and $750 for second with 3 entries. Love you guys. Josh is the GM in the morning and Shit My Money is the coach in the PM. If that were the case, I need to fire the coach.
As long as I get my severance pay, I don't really care.
I'll dig up some dirt on you. You're not going to be able to get it. That's fine. I know your history. I don't really have Talen Horton-Tucker, 34 minutes for Talen Horton-Tucker in this one.
Seems fine. He could play more, but I wouldn't want to
project it.
I don't want to project much higher. He played 39 minutes in their the last game he played without LeBron.
Right. Yeah. Obviously, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
Ownership looks pretty good at 30% if he's playing 39 minutes.
Right. Yeah. 34 to 36, I think makes sense.
Do you have any interest in Bradley or Ellington, Monk, Rondo, the 2 bigs, Bazemore? They seem awful. I don't know how you do it.
I keep wanting to get to Ellington because he's 3K. He makes sense on this team. He does fit the bill here for, a team that is going to give up a bunch of 3-point attempts. That sets up nicely, but it's still nothing more than just a dart throw hoping to get lucky. I mean,
11.9 minutes and 11.9 minutes the past 2 games.
Right. I mean, granted, LeBron was in, but
sure. He's the one that should be playing more when LeBron's in.
Right. Yeah. And even in the last game against Milwaukee where LeBron was out, he still only played 20 minutes.
Yeah. So you kind of just draw a line after AD, Russ, THT, and Melo.
Yeah.
On the Knicks side, we have no Mitchell Robinson. It doesn't look like we're going to have Taj Gibson either. And then basically everybody is getting some ownership on DraftKings. Julius Randle, for some strange reason, 10K on DraftKings. That's a pretty normal price tag for Julius Randle. He's 8,400 on FanDuel today, projected for 44% ownership. So ownership on DraftKings, 20%, 20%, 17, 13, 20, 16, 10, 12. We're basically playing everybody from the Knicks. It gets super complicated trying to sift through the Fournier, Burks, which one of Rose or Kemba Walker, how many more minutes does Quickly play? You have to play basically all of the Knicks. And outside of that crazy Randall price, I don't have a ton of confidence in any individual piece.
Yeah, I mean, this is a team where groups become really important, I think. And also, and we've talked about this before with this team, but it's also, they just are like the epitome of why it's important to have some sort of mechanism in your lineup building process that accounts for volatility and randomness. Because if you're just taking median projections, none of these guys look that good because you can't really project any of them for like 28 or 30 minutes, talking about the like Rose, Walker, Fournier, like all of those pieces. You can't project them that high, but they still have it in their range of outcomes, particularly the point guards. So Fournier not really playing fourth quarters at this point, but you're going to get a combined 48 minutes, you assume, from Kemba and Rose. Their median projections are both going to look pretty mediocre, but they both have very high ceilings because if they're playing well, they're going to play like 28 minutes.
Rose, by the way, questionable with the ankle injury. Him being out would be fantastic from a DFS perspective. Things would just open up a bit, but if he is in, best of luck figuring out who's playing the most minutes between those two at point guard today.
Yeah. I mean, if he's out, obviously Kemba looks better. You're probably getting, it's solidifying Quickly's minutes, I would think. Maybe a little bit more for Burks. This team has just been such a mess too, since Tibbs realized his bench is better than his starters.
Do you see anybody that immediately stands out to you?
No, I mean, it's really like, I like this team a lot. The matchup is good. The prices are good, but it's just, Burks looks fine at 4,200, but there's going to be games that he plays 18 minutes. Kemba looks good at 4,800, except for the games where he plays 20 minutes. Same goes for Rose. Noel at 4,200 looks fine. He played about 26 minutes last game. Like you said, no Robinson, and Gibson's doubtful.
Yeah.
So, likely plenty of minutes for Noel again. I think that's a good value. But for me, it's really, from a medium projection standpoint, none of these guys look like priorities. But at the same time, I expect to be getting to the Knicks in a lot of lineups because the ceilings relative to their salary are very high for a lot of guys.
I wish I had more that I wanted to say about this Knicks team, but it's just like a bunch of guys that should be in like 20% of your lineups and you just kind of walk away.
Yeah, I mean, I wish
you had the right combo.
I wish I could break it down more than there's going to be a couple of guys on the Knicks who play well tonight and you want those guys in your lineup. I mean, but that's really what it is, because it's not just saying, what do you say?
Hot take there. You want the guys that play the best.
But like, that's really what it is, because they're all priced to their median performance. And with the way that the rotations have been working in New York, if you're playing well, you're playing more. And so not only are you producing at a higher level, but you're getting more minutes. But obviously going into a game, you can't just say, oh yeah, Kemba's going to shoot well tonight and then play more minutes. Like, I don't know, but whoever is shooting well is going to play more minutes.
The really scary part here for me is Nerlens Noel at 4,200, because he can play 24 minutes because he can't stop fouling, or they don't have any other options behind him other than Julius Randle. Nerlens Noel can play 34 minutes today, and I wouldn't bat an eye at Tibbs doing that either. And if Nerlens Noel is playing 34 minutes, he's probably the center you need in your optimal lineup.
Yeah, I think Noel, if I had to just point to one guy and say, like, I'm making one lineup tonight, I have to play a Nick, Noel would be the first one that I'd get to.
I agree. Well, if I'm doing that on FanDuel, it's got to be Julius Randle because of that stupid ass $8,400 price tag. But I'm with you on Noel on DK. It's just weird. All right. Anything else for Lakers Knicks?
No.
Thank you to No House Advantage for being the presenting sponsor of this video. It is great to have them. You don't have to worry about, like, it's a very different mechanism because all we're talking about here are player props. You're taking overs and unders. You're building it on a confidence interval. It's 100% peer-to-peer. There are over 500 player props offered each day. You can get an extra $25 on your deposit if you use the promo code Awesemo. You still have the ability to do mass entry. They still have big prize pools. We have No House Advantage projections and optimal lineups at the website that will at awesemo.com that will help you take down these contests. You can download the app in the App Store or just simply go to nohouseadvantage.com. They've got their contest going today. I'm going to hit you with a prop. I want to know your over under. This one could be good. Corey Joseph over under 12.5 points plus assists.
Points plus assists. Oh, over.
Yeah, that one looks pretty good to me. I've got it at 13.2, so I'll take the over, and I can give him a couple more minutes pretty easily. If we're looking at Nerlens Noel, I got a couple for you. You let me know which one you like the most. It's 5.5 points, 5.5 rebounds, or 10.5 points plus rebounds. I mean, I want like over 5.5 rebounds for sure.
Yeah, so it's between the rebounds or the points plus rebounds. Like I kind of like the points plus rebounds because there's just multiple ways to get there.
Yeah.
But the rebound piece is the key.
Absolutely. I have them projected for 8.5 boards, so well north of that 5.5 mark. You can get this sort of information at awesemo.com to play at No House Advantage. Thank you to No House Advantage for being the presenting sponsor. Off to Denver now. 5.5 point dogs in Portland, 212 total. We do not know the status of Nikola Jokic at this time. He is questionable. If you're building lineups, be aware of that if we don't have that news when we get to it. Otherwise, we still have no Porter, no Murray, no Bones Highland, no Zeke Naji as well. On the Portland side, everybody's just in. So for Denver, I've got Jokic in. I like him. 11-3 on FanDuel, 11-4 on DraftKings. It's a wrist injury. It's Jokic. If he's in, I think he's going to be like a 1.65 to 1.7 fantasy point per minute guy. And from a raw points perspective, he could just absolutely become essential here. Any specific thoughts on Jokic?
I think you're low on Jokic if he's in.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he's the point being, like, yeah, he's clearly fantastic if he plays. This season, he's played 234 minutes without Porter Jr., obviously without Jamal Murray, 1.95 DraftKings points per minute, 35% usage rate, 39.5% assist percentage, 24.5% rebounding percentage. Yeah, he's just very, very, very clearly the top guy if he's in.
And I'm happy to get to him because I think the swaps are pretty easy to deal with. You know, when we get that news at like 9:30 or so, there's enough pay up stars for Denver, Portland, Dallas, potentially if Luka ends up in, Paul George, where you'll be able to figure it out pretty easily there. And on a 4-game slate, you don't even really have to pay attention to the lineup. Like, you're probably just going to have more pieces from those games too. This isn't like it was 2 nights ago when I made sure to, or I think it was 2 nights ago, to make sure I had another late game piece. You're just going to have that. There's not enough other options here today. So that makes it easier.
Yeah,
what else do you want to do with
is,
Denver?
Go ahead. And you should be doing this anyway, but, make sure that you're not screwing up and that you don't like put Jokic at center and Noel at flex or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Oh, for me, for FanDuel, I don't have that big of a deal, but DraftKings, that is very important. That will change up the game because everything else, you're going to end up playing a whole bunch of Zubats and like Yusuf Nurkic at that point. What else do you see for Denver today? I don't love a ton if Jokic is in.
If Jokic is in, I don't really see much of anything because Will Barton is up to 7,400. He's obviously still good, but Jokic's status makes a pretty big difference for him. Aaron Gordon is playing more minutes with Michael Porter Jr. out, but his production, if Jokic is in, doesn't really change. It's just that he's playing a ton of minutes, but he's up to 6,700. Monte Morris is still reasonable at 4,400, but if Jokic is in, nothing to get too excited about there. I don't think that, like Bones Highland being out makes it so guys like Rivers, Campazzo, Dozier could play a little bit more, but I expect it to kind of be spread out amongst those guys more so than any of them becoming really good plays. So if Jokic is in, it's pretty much just Jokic and move on because most of the guys that I'd be interested in have seen their salaries increase.
And if Jokic ends up out, I think we have to at least wait a little bit to figure out who's actually going to be the 5th starter in this lineup. We saw it be Austin Rivers for the first game. We saw it be JaMychal Green for the second. I anticipated JaMychal Green in the first one. I wish we could have flip-flopped that. I know that you had a bit of JaMychal Green as well. If Jokic ends up out, what are we doing here?
Yeah, if he ends up out, you're just going to want to get to a lot of Denver. They're still not as good as they were, a couple of days ago because the salaries for the most part have adjusted, but across the board, everyone's going to become better. My guess here is that you would get JaMychal Green starting again. They used him against Ayton last game. Now you have Nurkic. I still, then you still have to get into the conversation of how many minutes does he play, because we know that Portland has been more than happy to go small recently. And you could just certainly see Denver closing with, like Jeff Green at center or even Aaron Gordon at center potentially. So I still think, like, if JaMychal Green starts, I wouldn't really be confident going more than like 24 minutes in terms of projection. He certainly could play more, but from a projection standpoint, it would be tough to go higher than that. But at 3,900, that would still make him look good. Jeff Green would look better, especially, if they were to start Austin Rivers instead of JaMychal Green, then you're getting Jeff Green at center. So he's going to look even better. But across the board, it's just pretty much a bump for everybody. This year without Porter or Jokic on the floor, Will Barton's played 157 minutes. He's at 1.1 DraftKings points per minute with a 25% usage rate and a 20% assist percentage. Monte Morris is actually only at 0.7 DraftKings points per minute. But if you go back, that's in 95 minutes. If you go back to last year, he's close to a fantasy point per minute guy without Jokic and Porter. So he would start to look good for me at 4,400. Aaron Gordon has seen a usage bump. He's at 1.1 DraftKings points per minute in 118 minutes with a 23.4% usage rate. So Gordon would start to look a lot better as well. And then it would also just open up minutes to where, if Jokic is in, I think that you can still kind of take shots at the PJ Dozier Campazzo pair, but it's pretty thin. If Jokic is out, combined with the likelihood that this game closes small, it makes, a $3,300 Campazzo, or it makes Dozier look like more appealing pieces as well.
Anything else for Denver?
No, play Jokic if he's in, play everybody else if he's not.
On to Portland, where we don't really have many question marks. I will continue to play, or people are going to continue to play Damian Lillard, 8,800 on FanDuel, CJ at 7,600. Both guys are about 30% owned. Larry Nance is 20% owned on FanDuel. On DraftKings, it's just a flat. They look a lot like the Knicks. 22, 25, 19, 16, 20, 10, 16, 10. Everybody that's playing 20 plus minutes a game for Portland is getting 10 to 15% ownership at a minimum. Does anybody individually just immediately stand out to you for the Blazers? I think they're the easiest team to look at for today.
Yeah, I think they're the easiest to talk about because it's kind of just what we've been seeing. Nobody really stands out in terms of like a huge priority for me. They look to me like the field's basically getting it right. Where, it's a 4-game slate. There's plenty of raw points to be had from guys like McCollum and Lillard. So even though they don't stand out as glaring values, they're still good plays. There are values here in Little and Nance. One thing that I do think is important to talk about with Portland is that they are likely to be affected by Jokic's status. If Jokic is in, Jokic is playing 34, 35, or you assume Jokic is playing 34, 35 minutes. That doesn't mean they're going to match him with Nurkic because they've not been doing that really anyway. They've been happy to go small, but I would assume that Nurkic plays a little bit more, or at least that like Larry Nance becomes a little bit riskier. If Jokic is out and you have, JaMychal Green or Jeff Green playing center and then just getting smaller from there, I think that guys like Nas Little and Larry Nance start to look really, really good because it just like solidifies that this closing lineup is probably going to be very small.
Yeah, they can certainly run this smaller. 3,600 for Nance looks like a really interesting price today, but he's already at 20% ownership, so it might not matter. At least we know Portland is sort of the easiest team to look at for today. We don't have any glaring changes. We're pretty confident in how to project Portland at this point. So I don't have anything else to talk about here for the Blazers.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's so with Portland. I think it's another team like the Knicks where you do want to pay attention to your rules to some extent. With it being a 4-game slate, I probably won't really do, max 1, but like max 2 of Nance, Little, Nurkic, Simons probably. Yeah. Just, the way that I typically approach this is trying to think of what I think the closing lineup's going to look like. Like, who do I definitely think is going to close? And so you have McCollum, Powell, Lillard that I'm confident are closing. And then the other 2 pieces in any closing lineup could just basically be anybody else. So, I just wouldn't want more than 2 of those guys.
I think that is a very reasonable stance that I will be paying close attention to as we get on our way up to lock. If you're looking to sign up at Awesemo.com, I got a promo code for you. That would be stuffing. This can get you our NFL Express pass, our NFL Express weekly pass, for just $1. Again, the promo code is stuffing. Thanksgiving theme on this one. That gives you access to our player rankings, ownership rankings, everything that we have to offer for showdown and single game contests. That is the big selling point here because there's a lot of showdowns for Thanksgiving. Plus you then get them for Sunday. That's a lot of data. You get our premium tools and data for in-season fantasy football and tiers on DraftKings. Again, this is the promo code stuffing, an NFL Express weekly pass for a single $1. This is only good through Friday. So if you don't get it by that point, You done with it. Get in now. Stop guessing. Start winning. Join Awesemo Plus today. Let us close this out. Final game, Dallas at the Clippers. The Mavs are 4.5-point underdogs, 207 total. We've got a Q tag on Luka Doncic, no Frank Ntilikina, Maxi Kleber back. So apparently Luka tweaked his knee at the end of practice yesterday, which is now leading me to assume that he is not going to be playing today. I was assuming he was going to be playing today otherwise. I'm assuming you saw the same thing?
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you had seen that he went through practice yesterday, and like the tweet that I saw was from one of the reporters, and he had tweeted a video of Luka practicing, and then he followed it up by saying, a couple of minutes after this, Luka just smacked the bleachers and yelled in pain and left with a ice pack on his knee.
Yeah. So for right now, I am projecting him out. That seems like my best option considering he's been out. Like if he hadn't been out, I might not go the same direction, but 3 straight games, they're not coming back unless he's perfectly okay. Nothing matters for Dallas if Luka Doncic hurts his knee. So we've got Jalen Brunson, 7,200 and 7,300. We've got Tim Hardaway Jr., 5,600 and 5,800. These two guys were my top contenders on both FanDuel and DraftKings, assuming Luka is out. And I think that's going to stand. I think they're two of the best plays you're going to find today.
Yeah, if Luka's out, Brunson, Hardaway, Porzingis all look better. The salaries have started to adjust. You know, Porzingis at 8,500. He's about a 1.2 to 1.25 DraftKings point per minute guy. Without Luka, you would be expecting him to play 32 to 34 minutes. So he looks fine there. Certainly a good play, but at least starting to be close to correctly priced. Same can be said for Brunson, likely to play mid 30s in minutes. He's over a fantasy point per minute guy. Still looks good at 7,300. Not the slam dunk he was at 5,800, but still very good. And then Hardaway, I think a little bit riskier because he's still scoring dependent and he is losing some usage to Jalen Brunson, but does still look like a solid option at 5,800 if Doncic is out.
I'm willing to get to, I guess, a little bit of Dorian Finney-Smith. It's not going to be fun, but he will play north of 30 minutes on a 4-game slate. Does anybody else stand out to you? Do you get to Maxey or Dwight Powell, anything like that? Dwight Powell being 3,400 at least has like semi appeal.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, he has 4-game slate appeal, I guess.
Yeah.
You throw him in and hope that everybody that played Trey Lyles and Luka Garza and whatever just like somehow gets torched across the board. But
Nerlens Noel sucks.
Right. Yeah. I mean, outside of that, I don't really see much there. He's just not playing enough minutes. And then, Maxey being back certainly doesn't help either. So no, I don't really see much else. I'm with you on Finney-Smith. He's kind of a 4-game play also, like most slates, he just kind of gets phased out. But here I can see just throwing him in, assuming he's going to play 32 to 34 minutes and hope he runs into some stats. But
yeah, one of the cheaper ways to buy minutes today is Dorian Finney-Smith on a 4-gamer.
What'd you say?
He's like one of the cheaper ways to buy minutes for today.
Yeah. But as far as priorities go, it's just those main 3.
Okay. I mean, I agree with you. On the Clippers side, weird team right now. So Nick Batum is out, health and safety protocols. Marcus Morris is back. Obviously, no Kawhi Leonard, no Jason Preston, Keon Johnson, not with the team either. So I don't know how many minutes Marcus Morris can play, but I can't imagine it's a lot. I gave him 20. So there are a couple extra minutes to go around with no Nick Batum. We've got Paul George, 10,300 on DraftKings, 9,200 on FanDuel. Obviously, a pretty good price for old PG3. Reggie Jackson, looking okay, 20% ownership across both. Ivica Zubats, 20% ownership across both. They are clearly the 3 best guys. Do you see them any differently?
Did you just mix up Paul George and Chris Paul?
Did I say 3 and not 13?
Yeah, you said PG3.
Yeah, that's not right then. I caught my mistake.
Yeah.
I've done that a couple times so far. We were doing the breakfast menu and I mentioned a Sadiq Bey over prop against the Lakers. And when I finished it up, I was like, did I say the Lakers? And Ben was like, yes. I was like, all right, I meant the Heat.
But yeah, Paul George still looks good here, 10-3. We know he's been really good this year without Kawhi. Salary's still reasonable. You get both forward spots on DraftKings, so that looks good. Beyond him, it's a little bit dicier. Marcus Morris, again, how he fits in here in his return matters because, we saw like 26 minutes from Zubats last game with Batum being out. That in theory would help to solidify those center minutes. But exactly how many is Morris going to take? We know that he was really cutting into Zubats as they were closing with small lineups previously. Assuming he's not going to play a ton tonight, though, I think you can expect, 25, 26 minutes from Zubats again, which makes him look okay at 5,100. Reggie Jackson looks okay at 6,100, playing a lot of minutes. But George is, I think, the clear priority here.
Yeah. If Morris weren't coming back, like if it were an upper body injury, I'd be more interested in Morris. But if you're coming back from a knee for a while, you are just not falling into massive minutes. I would imagine they don't there's no incentive for it, especially in this era of basketball.
Yeah. And also, so I don't have chat open, but I'm assuming people are mentioning Hartenstein because they always do. Serge Ibaka is not on the injury report. So yeah, he played Hartenstein played 5 minutes last game with Ibaka back.
That I don't know what they're going to do because Hartenstein's been playing really, really well for them in that backup role. So I'm really curious what happens, but I gave him 8 minutes. I did give Ibaka some minutes. Justice Winslow played 10 minutes the last time out. So it's like there's another body that can sort of be a 5 or whatever position he is. Morris. Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's no either way. They're starting to get a lot of front court bodies, and none of them really need to be a priority at any point in time. That's what's kind of scary. Anybody else here? Do you get to Kennard or Terrence Mann? I mean, Eric Bledsoe's probably pulling a little bit more ownership than I was expecting. Even at I got him in for 28 minutes, and I'm going to probably be light there. What do we do with those three guys?
Kennard and Mann scare me a bit with Morris coming back, just because that's a spot where those guys can play multiple positions and they sort of run into more minutes because they're just ahead of other guys in the rotation. But like Morris comes back, if Winslow were to stay in the rotation, it becomes really messy. If Winslow DNPs, then there's obviously a few more minutes available, but I'm still not really confident in either of them. I think in large field tournaments, you can still take some shots on like a $4,300 man and just hope for the best, but not overly excited about either one. Bledsoe as a last piece in, I think is fine. I'm with you. I expect around 28 to 30 minutes. He's not the best fantasy producer, but 5,500 is a reasonable price tag.
Is there anything else we should touch on here for the Clippers?
I don't think so.
All right, let's sum it up. Who are your favorite plays for today's slate?
If Jokic is in, then Jokic.
Yeah.
If he's out, then like half of Denver. Outside of that, I think, I don't know, there's not many. Trey Lyles, if he starts for value. This is a slate where I think overall, though, its ownership's going to play a really big role for me because I think there's just a lot of very comparable plays across the board with a couple of exceptions.
Yeah, I'm with you. I really like Jalen Brunson and Tim Hardaway today, assuming Luka is out. I like AD quite a bit for 10-5 on FanDuel. I think that's a really nice price tag. Not that I don't want to get to someone like Nikola Jokic. Talen Horton-Tucker should be fine today with no LeBron. Those are some of the guys that I am looking at this moment.
I don't know if you mentioned Bam, but I really like Bam.
Yeah, Bam looking great and probably a decent matchup for today.
Yeah.
Understatement of the year, maybe. All righty. Deep dive coming up for you a little bit later. Deeper dive at 6, right? No, or at 5 rather, right?
5, yeah.
Okay. I think we're done here, guys. 4-game slate, pretty easy. Maybe we can save these extra couple of minutes for tomorrow because we will have 13 games to get through. Honestly, it's an easier show than this because we can basically talk about no one in most of them. We don't have to talk about how we feel about Terrence Mann's potential minutes or something like that. It becomes a fully meaningless task. So we'll see what we've got there. Thank you to No House Advantage for being the presenting sponsor of this show. Thank you to everybody that's just watching. Please enjoy yourselves. Good luck tonight. Win some money. We'll be back again tomorrow. Same time as usual. Later on, everybody.